Hi friends, how are we? I'm coming to you live from cozy gray Copenhagen. I hope you're feeling good wherever you are. This week we're doing another design advice video, interior design advice for my subscribers, which is so fun. These are my favorite kinds of videos to make. And the home that we are advising today is a fun one. It's this very cool apartment in San Francisco. It's in a Victorian building, which I'm sure a lot of you know is very typical in San Francisco. It's big, it's bright, and I personally think it has tons of potential to be an amazing space. And even better, they sent me a floor plan with overall dimensions, which is not only super helpful for me, but I think it's also very helpful to communicate my advice. So that's exciting. Along with the Photoshop, of course, which I am officially incorporating into all of these videos moving forward. But before we get into that, I want to take a quick minute to do a little YouTube channel housekeeping. I want to touch base. Basically, so much has taken off for me in the past few months, and a huge amount of that is thanks to this channel and you guys. I'm genuinely so grateful to have come across a group of people that are so sweet and engaged and encouraging, and I just really want to say thank you for all of the support. Ever since I first started chatting about design on the internet and exposing myself here, which is not an easy thing to do, my schedule has become so much more busy, and I've had so many very cool opportunities come my way, which is really, really amazing, but also a huge adjustment. And on top of that, I've been trying to keep making these videos every single week and do all of the work that comes along with that. And it's just been a lot. I feel like I'm spread pretty thin. So I've decided to approach my schedule more intentionally and responsibly because I want this to be sustainable for me. I want to continue doing all of these things and I don't want to get burnt out. So basically, I've decided that what will make the most sense for me is to post one video on YouTube every 2 weeks. I think that's just the right amount of time for me to create a good, thoughtful video without feeling rushed or overwhelmed. So moving forward, I will continue to post every other Thursday. I know that I've been very, very sporadic in my posting until now. I wasn't even always posting on the same day of the week, which is something you're supposed to do. Moving forward, it will be every other Thursday, so those of you who care will know when to check in. But yes, I am getting organized with my life. I'm also hoping to make more time to use Instagram and TikTok more, so if you're not following me there, you can go follow me there. And that's all. It feels really, really good to get organized because it's simply no fun to just always feel like you're stressed and rushed and behind schedule. And for me, a huge help in this process of getting organized has been Skillshare, which is the sponsor of today's video. You guys may have heard of Skillshare before. It's an online community for creatives with thousands of classes led by experts. They have classes in all sorts of topics, things like design, illustration, or photography, but they also have really interesting, more career-focused classes in topics like productivity and marketing. Like this class in Productivity for Creators by Ali Abdal, or this Google Calendar workshop for creatives by Jules Agri. Whether you're a freelancer or a small business owner, or really just anybody who wants to be more organized and more productive, I think that these classes on Skillshare are such a good resource. It's just this wealth of knowledge with so many interesting ideas to explore and discover. And Skillshare is offering the first 500 people who click my link down in the description a 1-month free trial. So you should go check it out, explore some classes, and start learning today. And thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Now let's go ahead and dive into this apartment. So my subscriber who lives here rents this apartment, but they said that their landlord is relatively relaxed. They said they're able to paint, potentially refinish the cabinets, and overall they're just ready to invest in some better furniture because they plan on living here for a while. They wrote to me that they're struggling with a few things. First of all, they pointed out that there are a lot of warm, yellowy, orangey tones going on from the floors and the wall color and the cabinetry, and it's bothering them. The walls are this yellow color and the floors are this high gloss, mid-toned, warm wood. The kitchen cabinets are similar and they feel like it's not working with the black granite, which is why they're considering refinishing the cabinets. Overall, they said that they really like wood as a material, which ditto, but something here is just not totally feeling right to them. Now, I agree that the general warm palette here is pretty overwhelming and it feels pretty like thick, especially when it has this very intense contrast with that black countertop and backsplash. I think that juxtaposition, I really hate that word, juxtaposition, but having that very strong contrast without many other more subtle contrasts in this space, I think is feeling pretty clunky and it's just not really working for me. Along with that, I think that the space plan of the furniture and the pieces themselves have a lot of room for improvement here. It's not totally working in harmony with the architecture of the space, and to me, it's just feeling pretty fragmented. So keeping those things in mind, let's talk about some ideas of what we can do here. In general, I think that this space has some really, really wonderful features that we can work with and we should play up, mainly the windows. But also it's a really nice size. The ceilings are a nice height. The living area here is about 12 by 14 feet, which is roughly 3.5 by 4 and a bit meters for my non-Americans. So let's hop into Photoshop and just clear out this space so we can kind of start from square one. First of all, regarding the color, I think that this paint color combined with the wood tone of the floors is feeling very thick and overwhelming, like I said. So I think that painting the walls a much lighter, more neutral color, not necessarily a bright white, but you know, a slightly warm off-white, maybe leaning to like a cream color, but nothing that's too beige or yellow, just because I think your floors are doing enough to warm up this space, and this room is so large, I don't think there's any reason to make any sort of statement with the walls here. So this will not only make your space feel lighter and brighter, but I think it's nice to have a stronger contrast between the floors and the walls. And when it comes to the kitchen, I really don't think you need to refinish these cabinets or change the counters, especially because you don't own this apartment. I think there are other things we can do, like painting the walls, that will make this work better. Already having that crisper definition between the cabinets and wall color will make the black counter and backsplash feel like it makes a bit more sense. But we'll talk more about the kitchen later, because first I want to focus on the living area. Now, I really love the thick baseboards in this apartment. I think they speak really nicely to the architecture of the building, that San Francisco Victorian style. I think we could go a step further and install some crown molding here. I don't think it should be super ornamented or anything like that, but something with a similar language to those baseboards, maybe even more simple, but having some sort of three-dimensional architectural element where your walls meet your ceiling, just something to catch the light and give some definition will make your space feel so much more refined. And before we get into the furniture and space plan, I want to talk about these windows because they're really wonderful. Bay windows like this are such a classic San Francisco feature, I feel like. I think this is really like the moment in the space. Do you know what I mean? And we want to do them justice. So we're gonna ditch these horizontal Venetian blinds. I actually think blinds like this can be very cool in a more modernist space, but I don't think they work well in all buildings. It just depends on the architectural style. And a Victorian apartment with bay windows is just not the place for these blinds, I think. So we're gonna ditch those and swap them out with curtains that are mounted on a rod way up near the ceiling, which along with the crown molding is really just gonna emphasize the height that we're working with. And now regarding the actual space plan in the living room, I understand that they probably put the sofa here because they want to make the most of the view. But I think the way that it's cutting the living area in half, especially with the door behind the sofa, it's just not really working for me. Given the proportions of this space, and even more so because there's this pendant in the center of the room, it's going to feel much nicer to have like a central anchored seating area in the middle of this room. Right now the pendant is hanging right above the sofa, which I think just feels a little funky. Usually we want a ceiling pendant like this to be in the middle of your space. So if it's a seating area like this, ideally it should be over your coffee table. So I think that we should start off with defining this seating area with a rug. Because of that black counter and backsplash, I think it's really important to bring in dark elements throughout the rest of your space. So I would actually recommend opting for a very dark, maybe like a charcoal colored woven rug. I think that will really confidently define this seating area under the pendant and just balance out that very dark moment happening in the kitchen. Now, I think it will make the most sense to have the long edge of this rug run the length of this room and then have it sort of punctuated by those bay windows at the end. I've noticed that a lot of people think they need to locate their sofa directly across from a window in order to make the most of a view. But I think that that can be kind of limiting, and it also sort of disregards how people sit on sofas. Like, we aren't these totally orthogonal robotic creatures that need to sit facing where the sofa is facing. It's actually very comfortable and natural to sit on a sofa at an angle. So I think it makes the most sense to place your sofa here along that dominant wall in the space, and people sitting on this sofa will still be able to look out the window very comfortably. And even more so because it's a bay window with that angle there. For the sofa, I think that opting for a lighter color can be nice with a rug like this. Again, I think we want the space to feel just more light and crisp and less like thick and overwhelmingly warm. And in general, I don't love sofas with a chaise unless they're in a very, very small, contained like TV room. And really that's just because of how they tend to cut up a space. So I would look for just a clean, simple, light colored sofa. And then we can have a coffee table aligned with the pendant above it. And across from the sofa, we can get two cozy armchairs that will do a really important job of not only rounding out the seating area, but also separating this seating zone from the kitchen zone. If you saw my last video on material palettes, you'll know that we're working with a warm wood tone in this floor, and it can be nice to bring in a good amount of contrast with the other wood furniture pieces that we'll bring in. So maintaining that warm undertone, but incorporating pieces that are lighter or darker than that mid-toned flooring is just going to create a really nice depth. I think you could definitely start off with this round coffee table that you have near your bay windows, and maybe later down the line you could get either a second coffee table or just a larger coffee table that would better fill out the space. But I think that the wood tone of that table would work quite well here. And maybe if your coffee table is a lighter wood tone, then these armchairs could bring in a darker wood tone that's still warm. I think the upholstery here could be a nice opportunity to pull in some color and pattern, whatever you're into. I would just make sure it's on the lighter side and it's not too similar to the flooring or the rug. And I think that the most important thing about these chairs is we need to be certain that they have a nice looking or somehow interestingly designed back, because the back of these chairs is going to be on full display for the kitchen and dining areas, and not all armchairs have nice looking backs, so something to think about. I would also bring in a small table between these chairs so that they feel like one cohesive unit opposite the sofa, and also so the people here have a nice surface to put their coffee on. This is probably also a nice opportunity to bring in an interesting contrasting material. The reason I would put the two chairs on the side of the kitchen rather than the sofa is because having groups of furniture with breaks in them, like with space in between them, it gives the vibe of a softer boundary compared to like the back of a sofa, for example, which is very much a harsh partition. I think it's nice to define this boundary between the living room and kitchen without totally cutting the space. And in a big open space like this, I think that tall elements can be really nice to define your zone within a zone. So locating a tall floor lamp on the far ends of these chairs, I think can make this seating area feel much more comfortable and contained. With that same reasoning, I would love to group the sofa with a nice little side table with some drawers for storage on the far end there and put a lamp on it. And I would put something tall on the other side here, maybe like a tall plant. I see that you have a lot of plants. You clearly have a green thumb. So I would encourage you to get a cool, tall, more sculptural plant that can sort of make a statement and really contribute to the spatial design of your home. I have more to say about your plants, but in general, I think it's nice to group plants together so they aren't scattered all over your space. So along with that tall plant, I would put one or two other plants with different heights here with it. Having these elements with height on either side of the sofa will just make it feel so much more contained, and it'll be so much nicer to sit there. And as far as art goes, I think it would be great to locate your Louisiana poster on this dominant wall behind the sofa. I don't know if you got this poster as a souvenir from Copenhagen or not, but if it is, I hope you had a great time here. And I hope you loved Louisiana Museum as much as I do. The architectural design of that museum is just so good. If any of you are coming to Copenhagen, you have to go there. But anyway, I really want this poster to feel bigger on this wall. So if I were you, I would actually get it framed with some more substantial matting. And we don't have that much color in this space still. And even the poster doesn't have much color. So an option here could be to get a cool colored frame with some colored matting. I think that that's a really nice way to highlight art and to bring color into a room. Because this poster is oriented vertically, I wouldn't center it over the sofa. I would hang it off center, closer to the new tall plant for the same reason. It's gonna sort of define the seating area better. I think that's the most intentional use of this negative space here between the art and the window wall. And this big piece of art is also a great opportunity for some nice lighting. I would definitely get a cool sconce to hang over that. Maybe the fixture could be black or incorporate another dark color. Again, because we want to balance that very dark counter in the kitchen, we want to pull black little moments throughout the space. Okay, and then regarding your sort of storage pieces, I actually really like the language of those shelves you have along the wall there. It looks like it's just sort of a wood shelf supported by these concrete blocks. I think that that's a really cool vibe, and I really prefer it to your white shelving unit behind your sofa that's holding all of your records. So maybe you could get some taller concrete blocks so that this shelf could actually store all of your records there as well. And I really like how you've styled the top of it with these smaller pieces of art leaning against the wall. I think it's giving a very cool and casual energy. I would do the same thing just on this wall near the door, and you can keep your record player here as well. And basically it will just relate to the seating area in a much nicer way. You didn't mention if the mirror here is totally necessary for you and how you live. I would ideally try to find another spot in your home for a full-length mirror, maybe in the hallway. But if you really feel that you need it, maybe you could just have one lower shelf that almost gives the vibe of like a bench and then a very large mirror behind it. I think that that location is really the only nice option for a mirror in this space. And it could be quite nice there because it would feel like it's really intentionally reflecting the light from those bay windows. Okay, and finally, to wrap up this living room seating area, I think another optional but not necessary spot for some seating would actually be to locate a cool lounge chair within that bay window moment. Only do this if you feel like you need more seating than the sofa and armchairs. Alternatively, it could be something like an ottoman or something with a very low back, but I think this is definitely a nice option. And if both your sofa and armchairs are fabric upholstery, maybe you could opt for some leather for a little bit of contrast there. I don't know, I feel like if you bring in a piece into this location, you can have a lot of fun with it. Okay, and moving on to the kitchen. First, let's notice what the change in paint color and crown molding can do for the vibe. I think that we should have the exact same approach for the window treatments here as we did for the bay windows. Let's ditch the blinds and bring in some nice floor to ceiling curtains. The panels of this will obviously have to live on the left side of the window because of the cabinetry on the other side, but I think that that can still look really nice. And really quick, I have to say that I think a lot of people would be inclined to hang art between these windows, but I think it's actually really important to leave this as just a blank wall. Having negative space there will let the windows be the feature of this wall, and they line up so nicely with your living zone and kitchen zone. I think we just want to make the most of that. Like, this section of wall is an in-between space. It should function like a margin between the kitchen and the living room. Okay, so let's talk about how we can make your kitchen more beautiful while working with these existing materials. First of all, I think with these very dark counters, I would try to have everything that lives full-time out on the counter be relatively dark. Limiting the contrast between these appliances and other random elements will just make it feel so much less busy. Along with that, this is so picky, but I wouldn't have any bright colored things like this red towel under your sink. I just don't think it looks nice to use highly saturated color unless it's highlighting something that you really want to highlight. And more than that, specifically this bright red color just isn't working with the palette here, in my opinion. Okay, so regarding the actual kitchen, there's a few things that are bugging me here. The biggest is this sort of stair-step effect that's coming from the differing height of the upper cabinets. It just doesn't feel cohesive or thoughtful to me. And also that sort of ornamental detail on the doors of the cabinet, it's really bothering me because of how it's like squished to be a different proportion depending on the different sized doors. It just looks kind of silly to me. So I think the way to work around these things is to try to pull out and highlight this sort of sink column, I'll call it, this section of cabinetry right here. I think it would be nice to use this section to really obviously break up this long, non-cohesive kitchen. There are probably a few ways that you could do this, but just what comes to mind and what I would suggest is taking down those upper cabinet doors above the sink and using that section for some nice open shelving. You can display some cool stuff there. And that way we have one less funkily proportioned cabinet door. And we're also giving our eye a break from all of that continuous wood. And with that same mentality below the sink, potentially I would consider swapping out those doors for a curtain. I think that that can look quite nice. I feel like that might be kind of a controversial suggestion. Not everybody loves that idea, but I actually think this can look quite good here, and visually pulling out that sort of sink section from the rest of the kitchen is really important in my opinion. It also relates well to the new space plan if you think about it in plan, because I think the edge of that sink cabinet should roughly align with the edge of our rug. So that's also gonna just sort of subtly further define the seating area, which is nice. And another potentially cool way to make this sink area even more special would be to bring in a little lamp above the sink. I really love having like a cool lighting moment above a sink, especially when there's not a window in front of your sink. And I bet it would be pretty easy to use the outlet that's there for the microwave. Okay, and the other thing that this person pointed out in their submission email is that the kitchen is very long and they feel like it's not convenient to move between the fridge and the usable counter space. That's why they brought in this IKEA island, which I think is working really well, but I wouldn't locate it up against the windows like that. One, because it's sort of blocking the window and it just doesn't feel very harmonious there. And two, because it sounds like it will be much more comfortable to use if you locate it across from the stove. It'll be a lot closer to the fridge and the sink and just sort of be more of a central element in the kitchen. I would also bring in a couple nice counter stools so that this really feels like a nice, usable moment. Relocating the island also opens up the opportunity for a little plant bench under the window here, which is where I think you should locate most of your smaller plants. This bench might be another nice opportunity for some color. Maybe you can paint it a color of your choice, and you can have a really lovely kitchen garden moment here. I think it can be really cool. I would look for a bench that could be roughly centered under that left window. That way it will feel aligned with the island and it will also make sense with that change in flooring material. And the last thing I would address here is the ceiling lighting. I feel like these two flush mount fixtures don't totally make sense with the linear vibe of this kitchen. I always think that track lighting is a really nice option for lighting in a kitchen. Maybe you could swap out these fixtures for some sort of suspended track light that just better complements the space. It could also be black for the same reason that I keep repeating. But yes, I think that those are the major changes that would have a big impact on the kitchen. Like I said, I just really don't love the different scales of that detail on the cabinet doors. I think we've done a pretty good job of softening the impact of those. The island would, for the most part, hide the cabinets under the stovetop. If you want to go above and beyond, you could change the doors above the hood just for simple doors that are more similar to the drawer fronts, because I just really don't love those. They look like eyebrows. Okay, and finally, let's move on to this dining area where I also think there are some very important changes that we could make. First of all, they noted in their email that when they host dinners here and eat meals with friends, they notice that everybody sort of orients themselves toward the living room and toward the windows, which really doesn't surprise me because I think this little dining nook is lacking its own sort of presence and identity and definition. Most importantly, when you consider this door here and the change in flooring material, this nook is almost a perfect square. So I think it makes sense to have either a square or circular table here, not a rectangle. I would probably go for a circle because it's quite a tight space and a circle will allow for a more comfortable amount of room for your seats. And as far as the seats go, we want this area to feel very cozy and substantial and like centered on itself, right? It's not a sideshow to the rest of the room. It's doing its own thing. So I would actually get some really solid, comfortable dining chairs. Maybe even like a swivel chair situation could be cool. When I was growing up, our like eating area in the kitchen had these 4 really cool, massive leather club chairs that swiveled. And my family ate dinner in them every night. And it was very cool and very comfy. But yeah, I would definitely keep like solidness and comfort at the front of your mind when you're choosing these chairs. And also make sure they feel round and not too square or rigid, because we don't want to create too many funky pockets of space in this little nook. And building off of that, I think the most obvious thing missing here that I'm sure you've already thought of is lighting. Because of the pendant in the living room, I wouldn't opt for another pendant here, but maybe having a cool wall-mounted lamp with an arm could be a really nice choice. I would look for something that has a pretty substantial shade or fixture to almost give this space the vibe of like a lower ceiling, you know? We're trying to make this as cozy and intimate as possible so it has its own presence in this nook. And finally, with that same line of thinking, I think this back wall is the perfect opportunity for another large piece of art to define this space. If you're into it, maybe looking for like a tapestry or rug or some sort of textile art that you could actually frame, that could have a really nice acoustic quality on this little corner. And I really think the bigger the better here. I wouldn't hold back on the scale of this piece. Okay, I think that those are all my thoughts. I hope that when I Photoshop them, they are clear. But I think this home genuinely has so much potential, and it can really come together to be just a wonderful interior. I'm most excited about highlighting these windows and doing them justice. I think letting them guide your design is going to be very, very impactful. So yeah, I hope this was fun, and maybe it gave you guys watching at home some ideas for your space as well. And remember that you can submit your space to this series by sending me horizontal photos to noahdanielstudio@gmail.com. And if you don't love the idea of your home being exposed on YouTube, I do offer private design consultations. So you can email me for more details about that. And yeah, I hope this was fun. Like I said, I will post another video in 2 weeks. So I'll see you then. And thank you for watching.